You're standing in a swamp. Your feet are sinking into mud with every step. The water comes up to your knees. There's nothing to eat for miles, and you're starving. Your tribe depends on you finding something, anything. And then you see it. Growing right there in the water are these tall plants with seed heads drooping down, heavy with thousands of tiny grains. You pull one stalk. The seeds fall right into your hand. You're holding something that will change human civilization forever. You just discovered rice. But here's the problem. These grains are tiny, incredibly hard to crack. And they're surrounded by a thick husk that won't come off. You have no idea how to process them. You have no idea how to cook them. And yet, thousands of years from now, half the planet will depend on this single plant to survive. So when exactly did humans figure this out? And how did they do it without any of the tools we have today? The story starts about 10,000 years ago in Southeast Asia, the Yangtze River Valley in China. Around the same time humans were figuring out agriculture in the Middle East. But rice was different. Unlike wheat or barley, rice grows in flooded fields. In the swamps and river valleys of southern China, early humans were probably collecting wild rice long before they farmed it, walking into wet areas, gathering seeds, bringing them back to camp. But the real breakthrough came when someone realized you could plant those seeds in the same flooded ground where they grew naturally. And they'd grow thicker, produce more grain. Suddenly, you didn't have to wander looking for rice. You could grow it where you lived. This discovery changed everything. There's a real genetic reason it worked so well. Wild rice evolved to shatter. The second the seeds are ripe, they drop off the stalk and scatter into the mud, which is great for a wild plant, but terrible for a farmer trying to harvest it. Every so often, though, a plant grew with a mutation that made it hold onto its seeds a little longer. Those were the easiest plants to harvest, so those were the seeds people kept replanting generation after generation. Without knowing, they were rewriting the plant's genes. Eventually, non-shattering rice became the norm. A plant that had, in effect, become dependent on humans to reproduce at all. By around 8,000 years ago, the Yangtze River Valley had become the center of the world's first rice civilization. People stopped moving around constantly and settled down. They built villages. They built irrigation systems to control the water. Communities grew. Populations expanded. All because someone figured out how to grow more rice in the same space. But growing rice was only half the problem. They still had to process it. And this is where things get really interesting. Imagine holding a handful of raw rice. The outer shell, the husk, is hard and inedible. The grain inside is edible, but protected by that tough exterior. Early humans had no machines, no mills, not even metal tools at first. So they used their own bodies and simple tools of stone and wood. The most basic method was pounding. Rice in a wooden mortar, a wooden pestle striking it again and again. The force would crack the husk, and the lighter husk would blow away, leaving the edible grain behind. This exact method is still used in parts of the world today, thousands of years later, and the basic principle hasn't changed. But early humans got smarter and invented something more efficient, the dehusking stick. A long wooden lever weighted at one end, balanced over fulcrum. Step on one end, it swings up. Step off, and it crashes down into a bowl of rice, breaking the husks. Some cultures scaled this up with water power, a stream filling a bucket at one end, until it got heavy enough to tip and slam down. An early machine, powered entirely by gravity and water. No electricity, no fossil fuels, just physics and smart design. Early humans also discovered that wet rice processed easier than dry rice. Soak the grain overnight, and the husk softened, separating more easily. It probably happened by accident first. Someone left rice in water overnight, and noticed the next morning's work was easier. Once they realized it, they made it standard practice. They were thinking like engineers, thousands of years before engineering was a concept. The cooking part was the final puzzle. The earliest method was probably roasting. Process grains on hot stones or in a clay bowl over fire. The heat popping the rice, making it easier to chew. Nutty, grain-forward, nothing like the bland white rice we eat today. That stayed the primary method for thousands of years. Then, around 4,000 years ago, humans figured out boiling. Rice and water in a ceramic pot over fire, the grains absorbing the water and softening. Boiling meant cooking more rice with less fuel, feeding more people from the same grain, and getting more nutrition out of every bite. Civilizations that figured this out thrived. Civilizations that stuck with roasting didn't expand as quickly. By the time we reach recorded history, around 3,000 years ago, boiling had become the standard cooking method across Asia. Recipes started appearing. People were adding salt, fermenting rice, making rice wine, and developing cuisine. Rice went from being a simple survival food to being the centerpiece of culture. It became so important that rice paddies literally shaped the landscape. Entire governments were built on rice taxation. Wars were fought over rice-growing regions. All from that first moment when someone in a swamp pulled a handful of rice stalks and wondered, what is this? And here's the part that makes it even wilder. This didn't only happen once. Thousands of miles away in West Africa, with no contact with Asia whatsoever, a completely different population domesticated a completely different species of rice on their own timeline, using their own methods. Two separate groups of humans on two separate continents arrived at the exact same idea. Because when you're hungry enough and a plant is generous enough, the solution finds itself. What's remarkable is that all of this, the soaking, the leverage, the water-powered machines, the irrigation systems controlling water at a massive scale, was built with zero modern technology. Just observation, experimentation, and the willingness to try things and see what worked. And the most incredible part? Half the world still eats rice as their primary food source, prepared almost exactly how ancient humans figured out. The husk is still separated by force. The grain is still boiled in water. The tools are fancier, but the fundamental process hasn't changed. You're connected directly to those ancient humans in the Yangtze River Valley, who didn't know they were changing the world. They just knew they were hungry and clever enough to figure out what to do about it.